with Meta and Google is that if your core business performs and you are committing to spending on AI, investors will reward you. And that's very much the story here. 33% top line growth for cloud. And that's what it comes down to, right?
Yep.
I always have this line, Microsoft, which I've had a relationship with since I was a child and I learned to use a computer, was always good at getting people to pay for software that others will give away for free. That's a true story. But they're showing that their core business is cloud computing and Azure, where they're the market number 2. Again, it's the same as Meta. Does your core business justify your right to spend on AI development through hardware or infrastructure, data centers? The Microsoft numbers tell that story very clearly.
Didn't Mandeep say that actually it's showing the monetization of AI, that I think in that 33%, almost half of it, or close to half of it, was the result of AI and AI impact.
And I didn't mean to be
revenue.
flippant. The criticism was they released Microsoft Copilot, and many people thought that was prematurely. If you're an everyday tech worker, what am I going to use this for? Nonetheless, the numbers show that people are paying for it. And that's impressive.
Hey, Ed, we're going to hear from Microsoft on the call. We'll get some guidance there. Obviously, that will help people get informed about how the company's thinking about the current quarter and the future. Apple tomorrow.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
Mark Gurman said, I don't care about the numbers for the most recent quarter. I just want to hear the Q&A. I want to hear about tariffs. I want to hear about the supply chain. I want to hear Tim Cook's comments there. You agree?
Yeah. Tim Cook famously says periodically, I am not an economist, but, and then will give us something about
He's
the world
not an
around
economist, but he's a supply chain expert.
Yeah. Like stories about hardware companies, think people that make tangible physical stuff. They're built from components that move from A to B all over the world, and there are cost implications. And there is no better microcosm of what's happening right now in global trade than Apple. And I get what Gurman's saying, but remember that Apple is the master of managing the bottom line. So if you are a value long-term investor, whatever you want to call it, people do pay attention to that because Apple is brilliant at boosting profit.
You know, Apple has, Mark Gurman has reported over and over again that Apple has struggled with AI. And we see that with what has happened with Siri. Do you think they should buy or would buy one of these standalone AI companies?
For those listening on radio only, I was smirking and nodding, going, yeah. Yeah, I mean, Siri, has been a bit of a flop.
Oh,
the early
Mark Gurman would
AI.
say bit of a flop, a huge flop.
Yeah, and, I've covered so many stories today, I lose track, but I think that there was some discussion by Alphabet about working with Apple and Gemini, their model going forward. Apple's looking at third parties to provide the underlying model that powers all of this. And as Mark has reported, the consequence of the poor rollout is they've now restructured that company at the top. Leadership changes, organizational changes to get back on track. I still love my iPhone, but I do not use Siri ever.
Yeah, same.
Hey, before you go, we did talk Apple and Trump and tariffs. You've got a scoop when it comes to Rivian and what they've been up to.
Yes, so prior to the US election in November, Rivian arranged with a Chinese battery supplier called Gotion to move a supply of LFP batteries from outside of the United States into the United States, and they paid for it up front, which is unusual for an automaker to do. You don't sort of say, okay, I'm not going to use these for a while, but I'll pay for them anyway. And it did that to have a strategic stockpile as a hedge, an insurance against the election. Then, more recently, I found out Samsung SDI, its Korean supplier, they said, Samsung, before these tariffs hit, we need you to move a very large inventory of battery cells from Korea to the US. Samsung did. So they have this hedge against potential tariff impact, but it's not really about money. It's about anxiety that at borders, goods get stopped and then you're left short.